British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has faced a steady stream of criticism over his controversial appointments, lack of transparency in his selection process, and poor response to pressing social issues. As public trust is put to the test, the question is Starmer putting political gain ahead of ethics and accountability? This article will delve into three of the most pressing issues of the moment: the appointment of Poppy Gustafsson, his suspicious silence on social scandals, and his lackluster response to criticism from the public and political opponents. In October 2024, Prime Minister Keir Starmer appointed Poppy Gustafsson, former CEO of cybersecurity firm Darktrace, as Minister for Investment. This seemingly sensible decision was quickly met with skepticism and criticism when Politico reported that the House of Commons Appointments Committee, HOLAC, had been given less than 48 hours to review Gustafsson's record before announcing its decision. This was too short a time to ensure a thorough vetting process, especially for such an important position. It is worth noting that Gustafsson had close ties to Mike Lynch, the founder of Autonomy and a central figure in the massive decade-long financial scandal at Hewlett-Packard. Although Gustafsson was not charged, her name has appeared repeatedly in investigative documents and court records. Starmer's disregard for such concerns to speed up the appointment process has raised questions. Was his selection based on merit and ethics, or simply on connections and political pressure? Richard Holden, a Conservative Party member, did not hesitate to criticise. Ministerial appointments are not a joke. Rushing through the process without proper vetting is a contempt for the public's trust and the seriousness of government. Despite the warnings, Starmer's government has defended its decision, arguing that all the necessary processes were followed. But if everything was transparent, why were details of the vetting process not made public? This lack of transparency only fuels suspicions that Labour is prioritising political convenience over necessary caution. Not only politicians, but also the media and public have raised serious questions about Starmer's leadership ethics. When an appointment decision is suspected of being hasty and irresponsible, public trust is sure to be eroded. If Starmer is negligent in important matters like this, can he be trusted in other important decisions? This is not just a personal mistake. It is a wake-up call for Labour's entire leadership. Not content with his controversial appointment, Prime Minister Starmer has been criticised for his indifference to serious social issues. In the recent Commons, Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch launched a blistering attack on Starmer, accusing him of supporting foreign sex offenders in the past and of not taking a firm stand in the case of Shamima Begum, a British citizen who joined the terrorist group IS. Badenoch asked bluntly, "Who are you on Keir's side? The British people or those who are harming this country?" Meanwhile, billionaire Elon Musk has also joined the debate, criticising Starmer for refusing to launch a national inquiry into child sex gangs. Musk wrote on the X platform, "If Starmer truly cared about justice, he wouldn't turn his back on victims to protect his own political interests." Although Starmer has denied the allegations, the prolonged silence and lack of concrete action have left the public increasingly impatient. Is this just a strategic delay or a sign of indifference to the pain of victims? In addition, the way Labour has treated local businesses under Starmer's leadership has also angered people. In a Financial Times report, small business owners said that operating costs had skyrocketed in the first 100 days of the new term. Guy Richardson, a long-time pub owner, said, "I've had the Union Jack outside my pub for 40 years, but I've had to take it down because I'm not proud of this country anymore. Costs are rising, taxes are high, and the government has given me nothing but empty promises." The criticism has come not just from political opponents, but from people who once put their trust in Starmer. When a government doesn't listen to its people, what happens to national trust and unity? Amid a growing lack of trust in government, the asylum seeker row has highlighted Starmer's mismanagement. charities have warned that his proposed anti-trafficking laws could inadvertently criminalize hundreds of asylum seekers who have risked their lives to find safety. We're talking about families, children fleeing war. Is imprisonment really the right answer? Asked a representative of the Refugee Council. In the face of pressure from all sides, Prime Minister Starmer has steadfastly defended his policies, arguing that they are necessary to maintain order and national safety. However, when the law becomes a tool to punish vulnerable people without considering the circumstances, does it really reflect the humanitarian values that a civilized society should pursue? Looking back at the series of events from the controversial appointment, the weak response to social issues and the lack of attention to the voice of the people, a worrying picture of Keir Starmer's leadership style gradually becomes clear. He once promised to be a leader for everyone. But do his recent actions reflect that promise? When public trust is challenged, a true leader needs to listen, correct mistakes, and put the national interest first. Unfortunately, up to now, Starmer seems to be going back to that. In other news, shortly after US President Volodymyr Zelensky called him a dictator, Ukraine's president hosted Donald Trump's envoy, Keir Starmer, in Kiev. Although the meeting was videotaped, reporters were not allowed to ask questions, a request reportedly from the US. The Ukrainian president and Kellogg had been scheduled to issue a joint statement, but that was cancelled at the last minute. Although no public statements were made, the meeting took place amid strained relations between the US and Ukraine. Observers say that Kellogg, despite being Trump's envoy, may no longer be central to the former president's foreign policy strategy. This has raised concerns that Ukraine is struggling to win support from key figures in Trump's team. Meanwhile, Washington's rhetoric has become increasingly harsh on Ukraine while softening toward Russia. A senior US security official declined to say whether Mr. Trump considered Russian President Vladimir Putin a dictator, instead criticizing Mr. Kellogg for rejecting a US proposal to develop natural resources. President Trump is clearly frustrated with Mr. Zelensky because he is not ready to come to the table. We hope Ukraine will reconsider soon, the official said. With US support becoming uncertain, Ukraine has been forced to seek help from Europe. Meanwhile, NATO troops are training in Romania, with plans to potentially deploy European forces, including British troops, to Ukraine as part of a reassurance force after any ceasefire with Russia is reached. However, the idea has met with fierce opposition from Moscow. The deployment of military forces from NATO member states on Ukrainian territory is unacceptable, a Russian official stressed. On the ground, fighting continues to rage. In Bucha, the town that was the first target of the Russian attack, a memorial has been erected to commemorate the victims of a month of Russian terror. Residents have no doubt who is behind the devastation. "We are trying to rebuild our lives, but who will heal the wounds in our souls?" said one woman who survived the attack. The reaction from Ukrainians to statements from Washington has also been one of outrage. When asked about the US president's suggestion that Ukraine was behind the conflict, Orlena, a resident of Bucha, flatly dismissed it. "It's a lie. He called our president a clown, but if you need a bigger clown than Trump, you'd have to look far," she said. But while criticism from the West has frustrated Ukrainians, the harsh reality of war remains the most haunting. In that context, the cancellation of the Washington press conference is not just a routine diplomatic move, but also a reflection of the deepening rift in US-Ukraine relations. As confidence in Washington's support falters, the question is whether Europe is ready to take on the role that the US is gradually abandoning. But as NATO countries debate military intervention, the Ukrainian people are left to face the brutal reality of war on their own. So, what do you think? Is Labour under Starmer really the answer for Britain? Or are we just witnessing a government that puts politics before responsibility? Leave your thoughts in the comments, hit like and subscribe to make sure you don't miss the latest updates.